I like these 1.5" cup hooks. If you happen to have ordered a unfinished version from me, I've already done this for you. But you'll notice that the cup hooks are only just started. They're not actually all the way in, and that's because you're going to want to take them out when you finish the box and then put them in. Now I actually drill holes on both ends, the tops of both ends, just that way a person can set them up the way they want. However, I like mine set up right next to the drawers. Now, obviously, if I'm not careful here, I can go all the way through the top, which of course we don't want to do that. So I'm going to check and go, all right, what I need to do is I need to stop. I use this template. I need to stop a little bit before I get to this point right here. That's my gauge. Now, this of course is the right size drill bit for a pilot hole for that cup hook. And if you're wondering what that is, it's just a template that spaces the hole correctly. I've just sort of measured them out. It seems to me like, let's see what it is. The holes themselves are actually 2 1/4 inches apart. And it looks like it starts just a little over 2 inches from the end, about 2 1/8 from the end. You could, of course, just measure them and mark them, which is probably what you're going to want to do if you're building from nothing. Since I drilled so many of them, I've made a template to help me do it, so I don't have to mark them every time. And again, the most important thing is don't go all the way through the box. Put a hole in the other side of the box. The exception would be unless you were going to laminate the box, in which case it'd be alright. It wouldn't matter whether you went through it or not. Now, I just did both ends just in case the customer wants them on the other end. They'll have a place to put them, but I like them by the drawers because that's where the utensils that go in these things are often stored. They don't have to be, they can be stored in one of the wash tubs as well. Of course, what the cup hooks do for us in a functional way is they put things right at our fingertips, which turns out to be a very good thing in camp cooking circles. You don't want to have to be looking for things. You want to know exactly where it is. And when you need it, you've got it. It's right there hanging from a hook. You just grab it, maybe a spatula or a spoon or something like that. And I've discovered that food burns very fast. And when you spend your time looking for things, the odds of burning something just go up exponentially. And the more you have to look for, the worse the problem becomes. Now what you find happens is that sometimes your little dowels, the hole's a little bit bigger than you need, so all you have to do is take a little hot glue and that'll hold it, but yeah, it'll still come out if you ever want to take it out. The other thing is, for those of you that are building your own, there are other options. You have these things called shelf adjusters, which would work just as good. There's these plastic kind of ones. And then there's these things that your cabinet workers call spoons. They'll work as well too. And again, you can just hot glue them in. So this is actually Barbie 2 that I'm putting together at the moment. And what we have now managed to do by hot gluing all those little dados in, or by hot gluing all those dowels in, is we've provided a spot for our shelves. And then of course, need to mount either a toothbrush holder. If it was going to be used as a toothbrush holder, you might mount it like down here in that set of grooves. That way you could get your toothbrush in and out. But this one is going to be used as a shelf support for a leaf because this is a grubby tube. So it'll go up in the top. Now I like to use these zinc plated deck screws for this purpose. And it turns out that this bit happens to be just exactly the right size for this too. Now if you use these, make sure your torque setting is way down on it, otherwise it'll just strip it out when you put it in there. It'll probably still hold okay. There isn't any real force on it. But it's probably better that you don't. Strip it out, that is. Slide the doors in. And what we have here is a stained and finished drawer half of Grubby 2 chuck box. There's also tends to be a couple little dinky details that we have to do that you theoretically should not have to do. For example, this is a 1/2 inch rod, that's a 1/2 inch hole. Well, in many circles that is never going to fit because the hole has to be a little bit bigger, or the rod has to be a little bit smaller than a 1/2 inch. Now as it turns out, I'm going to fix that with a 17/32 drill bit that I have, which really is going to make the hole just a little bit bigger. And that actually feels pretty good. Might actually be a little too big now, but I have a fix for that as well. That's almost just a little bit too sloppy. Might vibrate out on a rough road. Now I'm going to show you one of these days. I'm going to show you a really trick way to do this for you guys that are pure woodworkers. But for my standard population of people, this is how we'll have to do it. Now, if they are a little too loose, and sometimes they are, and if you find they start vibrating loose, what you can do is again use hot glue. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put some hot glue on this. Stick it in here. Now this rod has to come out because you might want to put your paper towels or something like that on it. And I'm just going to keep turning it while it cools. Because you see what I'm really doing is I'm not actually gluing it in. I'm just making something of a gasket. It's like I just made sort of something of like a spacer gasket, which will tend to hold this thing in place for us. You can do the same thing with candle wax, by the way. Paraffin wax. And if you've got something that's just a little bit too, let's call it just a little too loose, it's going to vibrate out. This is one of the things that happened when I did this rods and rope thing is we came up with this situation where these rods in some cases like to vibrate out. So what I do is this, and that fixes it. Don't let it dry. I mean, even if it dries, you can still get it loose, but now it won't vibrate out. You can still take it out, but it won't vibrate out. That's important. And you can peel off the extra stuff once it cools. We'll do the same on the other side. Anybody out there guess that I live on a farm by any chance? Maybe one of these days I'll take you a tour of this place. It's actually a horse boarding ranch, but we have some chickens, we have some goats, a donkey. Okay. So if I wanted to put a paper towels on this, by the way, what I would do is I would just kind of push it a little ways, maybe halfway. And we grab our paper towels here and go, and then push it back. Okay, so there you go. Tinfoil is also a real good thing to have on these, but that glue has kept it, so that it's kind of, it's not sloppy anymore. It will hold. It'll hold by itself and it won't vibrate out either. Let's say I want to use the rods to lock the stand to the box. Of course, this is one option for you. You don't have to do this. You could put rope handles on the box if you wanted to, or just not do anything. That's where I used them for years. It's easier to take these out before you put the box on top, if you're going to do that. So that's what we'd do, is slide that box up over the top. And then as it turns out right here, let me see if you can see that. Yeah, I guess you can see it. There's actually a hole that goes all the way through the box. And what we're going to do is we're going to take this and stick it in here. If you happen to remember which side was the drawer side, it's easier to put it in that way. It goes here. The other one goes over on this side. Now you see what happens here. I can't take the stand off the box anymore. The stand and the box are locked together. A little bit safer. You won't pinch your fingers that way. Okay. Then when you want to come off, of course, pull these out, and the stand will slide off. Or you could just leave everything here. This, by the way, is how I did it for years, probably 4 or 5 years. This I call this the rods and rope mod, is very recent, just within the last year. So if you wanted to carry it like this, you could, but you just have to put your fingers way in there and pay attention to what you're doing. Otherwise, this could pinch your fingers. Not so important on a main grub because they're not as heavy, but a grubbing one, it could be significant if you're getting in a real big hurry and you aren't paying attention, or you really have problems when somebody else carries your check box. Now, the other thing you might want to do is insert rope handles. So I'll show you how to do that as well. So what I have here is really anywhere from 3/8 inch, I think this is 3/8 or 7/16 diameter rope. Could go all the way up to a half. So 3/8 to a half would work because your hole is actually a 5/8 hole. And about 20 inches works good. You'll see on this one here I've already put the masking tape. You do that to keep it from fraying. Now I'm going to make 4 of these, one for each end of a Grubby 2. I actually have a mark right here, but it's right about 20 inches. Now these rope handles are not something that I actually supply with the Grubby 1 or Grubby 2. They're something that you need to come up with, and the reason is, a lot of people won't necessarily use them that way. But I figure it's a pretty easy thing to do, and obviously I'm showing you how to do it, so I try to keep from adding expenses to the box. If you include things that not everybody uses, then it's kind of an expense that everybody has to pay for regardless whether they use it. Actually, that's what I'm going to do with a lot of stuff, is I'm going to try to make up for having to do it by showing people how to do it. And this then will help me keep the cost of the box down as inflation begins to take us over. Which of course is going to happen because of our $17 trillion debt. That's a whole other story we don't want to get into. Now, the other thing we're doing here is we're just putting a little glue on this, kind of much like we did with the ends of the boxes. You're just sort of gluing all those strands together. And the advantage of doing that, of course, is that it just keeps them from unfurling. And I even leave the tape on them. You could take the tape off, but I just leave it there. It doesn't hurt anything. It'd probably wear off eventually anyway. Okay, now just find a place to set them while they dry. Sometimes you could just put them down in a glass of some kind would work. I usually stick them in my vise like that. All you have to do here, once your glue has dried, is just tie a knot, and just make sure the knot is good enough so that that end is not going to come out. But you'd think it was morning time around here. Now I'm just going to shove it in one side. And then pull it through the other. Tie another knot. We're going to have to do the same thing on the other side, so let me see if I can show it from this side. Same procedure. All you have to do is just push these in. And then reach in here and grab it. These are probably a little short. They should have been 24. and they'll work, but they're just a little bit too short. But that's how you tie it. Okay, so now we have both a box and a stand. We put the two together. What we have here is a drawer half of a Grubby 2 chuck box, and a lot of people would use this as a mini chuck box just by itself. By the way, if you can use a folding leg extension leaf with this as well, or of course it can just be half of a Grubby 2 chuck box.